Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine
What's
a
your
light on
story?
incredible. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission? Welcome all to accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible individuals and organizations and the work that they do. I am your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic paralyzed below my shoulders and a power wheelchair user. I'm a community relations manager at accessiBe and a passionate disability rights advocate and trial attorney focused on breaking down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Today on accessiBe Spotlight Sessions, we're joined by Bernard Chiira, the Director of Innovate Now, Africa's first assistive technology accelerator. Welcome, Bernard.
Thank you, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, it's such a pleasure to have you and excited to dive into your journey, your story, and all things Bernard. So let's just do it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my journey, Josh, began 37 years ago. I just turned 37 in November, and I was born in...
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I was born in the central parts of Kenya in a small village. So I'm pretty much a country boy by birth, but I became a city boy by, living. I moved to the big city in Nairobi when I was 4 or 5 years old. When I was born at around the age of 2 weeks, Josh, I developed a condition, and when they took me back to hospital, they realized I had brittle bone disease. And this is a genetic condition, as they say, that causes frequent fractures. And this was the beginning of a long journey or with disability. And a big part of my childhood was in and out of hospitals. I also developed scoliosis around the age of teenage. So my journey was one where I grew up in a family. My mom, she had the ambitions of becoming a teacher, but circumstances forced her to make a choice between raising us, her kids, and following her ambition, because at that time, it was very difficult. My family had siblings, 4 of us who had disabilities, and 3 that didn't. So, and we grew up in the village where mostly she was engaged in farming. And my dad was working in the bank. He had a long career in the banking industry. It was very difficult for him because he was always being transferred in different parts of the country. So, in any case, we learned how to, these values you hear around inclusion, diversity. I think for us, we had to live them in the family at that level, because some kids were, without disabilities, and others, had, mostly physical disabilities. So we moved to Nairobi when I was around 4 years old, as I mentioned, mainly to look for better healthcare, which was not available in the village. And as the journey of most kids with disabilities in Africa, getting access to school was very difficult. The education system and the infrastructure, is not very inclusive. Even up to this date, we struggle to ensure that, schools become inclusive and can accommodate children with disabilities. But unfortunately, that was not the case then. And because of this, I had to be, at a very early age, go to a boarding school, which was a special school for kids with special needs. And this taught me a whole great deal about life, Josh, how to be independent, and also exposure that, you're not the only kid who has a disability. So from a very young age, I did accept, myself, and understood what was going on in my life, and knew that there were others like me. And it was a good platform to really just go after your education and developing your talents, without the constant need to see the differences between you and other kids. But it wasn't sustainable, and I could feel it from a very early age, because what happens is I kind of started having this urge to interact with, the regular world that was inaccessible and not accommodative, because I thought, what would happen to me, after many years in a bubble, and then I'm released to the world that did not know how to interact with me. So I always had that at the back of my mind. So when I finished my primary school, I told my parents I wanted to go to regular uh, high school. And this was very tough because, we knew how difficult it was even to get, into kindergarten. But my parents have always been very supportive. They've been a support system really for helping me achieve all the success. And they gave it one more shot, and we did find a school. And it was interesting because this school was it was known for things like basketball and sports. It was a very athletic school, but the reason they were interested with me is because they had seen a video clip of myself in my primary school days. I used to engage in things like music and public speaking. And then this particular occasion, I had on one of the years, won a public speaking competition nationally, and I was the number one in the country. And the school had seen this video on TV. So when we went for this interview, they were like, we know that there's potential in these kids, because I joined with my brother Robert, uh, who also had a disability. And we got into the school. They were not quite, adapted, but they had a very, open mindset and inclusive mindset. And that is all it took, and the support of students around me. And when I went there, my ambition was one, just to, prove that, I can be good academically, I can participate in other activities. And I ended up getting, I ended up being a role model for other students, but also teaching them so much about kids with disabilities. Like they can be smart in class, they can be great friends, and then it was a very great experience for me to have the courage, to just want to be uh, in that school, even though it wasn't the best. We still had stairs, no lifts, but they would sometimes, I remember this year I had to use a wheelchair for a long time after surgery, and they would carry me up the stairs with it and down the stairs. And this was, um, you know, a good platform. But after high school, I gained a lot of interest in computer science. I used to love video games when I was small, and I decided to go after computer science, and I did a double degree in computer science and business. And luckily, I managed to get into one of the best universities in Kenya. It's called Strathmore University. Um, and it's there that I developed my leadership skills. I was a student leader. I used to love music, so I joined the choir, and we did concerts and won many competitions and recorded albums, traveled in and out of the country. So this gave me a lot of exposure, really. And also, I didn't know that naturally I was speaking to people without speaking to them. People were watching me and they were like, maybe it's not so bad to have a disability. People like me can actually, thrive. And I think this was beautiful in so many ways, because people never used to tell me, but at one point somebody told me that just by watching me or seeing me do the things that I do, they were quite challenged and motivated.
You changed their perspective.
Yes.
You show them that most anything is still possible.
Yeah.
Approach, right attitude.
And this is not very common. Most of the experiences that people like me have are very negative. there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of, barriers that hinder so many of us from moving forward. And these barriers are not our own making. Sometimes it's just so difficult to leap over them.
But the right conversations, putting yourself in the right situations, you teach people. And how did you get to the point of creating Innovate Now and the Accelerator? I want to learn more about that as well.
Yeah, so fast forward many years after campus and all that, I started out my career actually working in innovation in the same university that I went to. So they set up a university-based lab that was, interfacing with industry. And I was managing the incubator there for 4.5 years, working with startups. And it was during that time that I met some professors from UCL in London, and they were in Kenya looking for doing an exploration of the ecosystem because they wanted partnership to launch an accelerator that would focus on disability innovation. So when I had those two words in the same sentence, for me, disability innovation was like a light bulb moment. I knew that I've always wanted to do something related to disability, either to give back or improve the situation, but I hadn't quite known what it would be. But when I had this, I thought this was it, because they were looking for someone to co-found and launch this accelerator. It would be the first in Africa. And it would basically be saying that it's time for addressing the barriers around assistive technology. And because GDI comes from a very strong academic background, they had done all these studies to try and understand what are the leading barriers for people with disabilities across the world, especially in emerging countries. And they figured that the lack of access to assistive technology was one of the top 10 barriers, sitting very high there, top 3. And there were many challenges around this. And one of them is market failures, where you don't have any companies that provide these products locally at the right price and at a good quality. And you have, big medical companies that, they come from other markets and are basically priced high for those markets, and they don't understand or are not really aiming to look at users here as customers. So anyway, I thought it was a great challenge after a long career there. I mean, a relatively successful career there. And I decided to cross over, and we launched this exactly 3 years ago, Josh, because the 3rd of December this year, we celebrated our 3rd anniversary. And we've been able to, over the years, support 37 startups, over 6 cohorts, and are now beginning to see some of them on a path to scale. We have companies going to Europe, expanding in Europe. We have solutions that are already having an impact here in Kenya. So at Innovate Now, really, the idea is open the door for innovators, and let's make sure that we can start breaking down those barriers one after the other. And we have identified assistive technology as the first one.
Can you tell me the success story out of those 37 that would be like a fun story to share with how you help them and what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I love our founders, Josh, because I think I'll set some little context for you. To innovate in some parts of the world is very difficult. Like in most emerging countries, the ecosystems are very young, they're not developed. So there's no angel investor waiting with a check to write for you. There's no rich uncle waiting to invest in your business. So, but all the same, we have amazing founders who have taken on this challenge. And one of them is a gentleman I really respect. His name is Brian. and he runs a company called Hope Tech. And Hope Tech is a company that joined our first cohort when we launched in 2019. And they've been working on this idea that it isn't fair, it doesn't make sense that in this digital age, you can have self-driving cars, but blind people cannot move freely and navigate their environment. That has bothered him. And even though he's had the ambition to innovate for blind people since his high school days, because he went to an integrated school where he could see their potential and the barriers they faced in the same class. So he came up with, a patented technology. He has an international patent to launch this new medical device assistive product that is a wearable. So you wear it on your body and you literally wear vision. So it has a camera, an AI camera that reads the environment for the blind user. And then there are sensors on the body that receive feedback and use the skin as a medium to receive haptic feedback, so vibration patterns that have been programmed to give real-time information about the environment. This sounds like high-tech stuff, but it's happening. And it's from Kenya to the world, because he's launching this at the global market. And I respect entrepreneurs who want to solve difficult problems, because this is very difficult to do. And this is just one of the examples. I have many. I have another one called Lincoln, who is
we're definitely limited on time, so I definitely want to be able to continue getting through all the questions, but it's amazing that you have 37 already under your belt. And so let's say there's another someone that wants to apply. What do they need to do, and kind of where do they go?
Cool. So actually, we do have a call that is live at the moment. So we are currently recruiting for our cohort 7, and we receive applications on our website, and the address is www.atinovatenow.com/apply. So that's www.atinovatenow.com/apply. The cohort starts in January, and the deadline is 5th of January to apply. And entrepreneurs that get to join our 7th cohort can expect to get access to some of the best expertise in assistive technology. We work with global networks, including WHO and other partners, and we understand emerging markets. So if you're an entrepreneur from any part of the world and you're interested to bring solutions in Africa, then we are your go-to partner.
I love it. Go-to partner. You got it. Down to accessibility. I would love to ask you, what does accessibility mean to you?
I mean, for me, accessibility means being able to have access to the same opportunities without having to leap over so many barriers. I'm talking about accessibility both in the digital world and in the physical world. I think for me, it's a principle. It's a principle of equity, and it's a principle of that reflects who we are as humanity, that we are all equal, and we cannot afford to create a world that segregates or separates. And that is why it's so important that we create a world that is accessible to all today and in the future.
I love that. I love that. And if you had one message to businesses, why is it so important to be able to be welcoming to people with disabilities?
I think for businesses, disability is the new dimension that is going to drive business in the 21st century and forward. Why do I say this? Disability is not new. It's been around. And if you actually trace some of the best innovations we have in the world today, they were pushed by the needs and the innovativeness of people with disabilities. So persons with disabilities can be the greatest assets in your company, especially if you are CEO or top leadership, because they are the fast track to empathy and building beautiful products and services that everyone can use. So don't look at them as a nice to have. They are a must to have, and they are going to shape the future of business today and into the future.
Great answer, Bernard. And I just want to thank you so much for being our guest today on accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. And just Bernard, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. It's a pleasure. And I hope we can continue shining this spotlight on many others doing amazing things across the world.
You know we will. And thank you for being a disability change maker. And for all of our guests, thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. And until next time, take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye. And thank you so much, Josh.